episode 105, Author to Author. I'm J.V. Hilliard, and welcome to the Realm. Today we have a guest author, Dane Cobain. Many of you know Dane from his own authorship in literature, both in poetry and in contemporary fiction. And some of you, I'm sure, follow him on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all the likes. And I welcome Dane to the show today. Dane, nice to get you back.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Good to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. And Dane, I titled this episode Author to Author because I think our work together and you helping me as a development editor on this piece was an interesting journey. It's something that, as far as I know, you haven't in the past written anything in fantasy adventure, but you were a fan of the genre. Curious as to your experience working with an author outside of genre and what the differences were from the processes that you have internally when you're getting ready to publish one of your own works.
Sure. So I think the interesting thing about fantasy is that at its heart, it's still very much plot-driven, character-driven. So it's got, that in common with any other genre, really. I think the main difference with fantasy is you have to build that entire world. So I've kind of come close to fantasy with magical elements and supernatural elements and things like that. But it's all still been set in our own world. And so I haven't had to expend as much of my time thinking about the world in which it's set. Whereas with yourself, obviously, we have to build the entire world. We have to set up the magic system. We have to talk about the politics. And so fantasy, I think, is an interesting genre that really it has its own rules, but it also fits in with the rest of the rules that you're familiar with in other genres as well.
Yeah, I think you have a couple of points in there. I mean, first of all, someone like me oftentimes is blind to things that people that are reading other types of books and not reading mine are used to. So you're right. But I think from my side of the table, and in this case, my side of the pond, what has been interesting for me is when I don't see that, when I'm blind to that, and I get a chance to hand over something to you to read, and you're able to pick out flaws that I might not have seen because I've been a fan of the genre. So I forget that I have to explain that to folks that may be neophytes to the realm.
For sure. And I mean, I think it worked quite well with you that I've read fantasy, but haven't written it. And so I kind of come to it with a reader's point of view. But you always want to get that second pair of eyes on things just to make sure it makes sense. And again, talking about magic systems, I think the key thing is there are still rules behind fantasy. Otherwise, it just all breaks down. You still need to have a certain set of constraints that the reader kind of understands.
Dane, I agree with that. That's important. But for people that have never read a fantasy novel before, do you think, if I'm a fan of sci-fi fantasy, is this something that would attract me? Would I pick this off of a bookshelf and buy it?
I think it's quite interesting because, The Last Keeper is sort of quite suited to somebody who likes something like, say, Star Wars, which is sci-fi, but it's sort of sci-fi fantasy almost. But also it has, I guess, kind of elements of sort of space opera in it. And this is because of, the politics that you're able to put into it. And I suppose that's because of your own political background as well. But it's not like dry politics, it's not like reading a textbook or something like that. It's much more accessible. I think The Last Keeper is kind of applicable really to anybody who likes any genre. It's just a well-told story that happens to be fantasy, Yeah,
you're right. I think what we've done within The Last Keeper in the series is making sure that if you're 12 or 13 years old, you could pick up this book and be able to read it. And if you're 80, you're going to get the same kind of enjoyment out of it.
I agree. And I think also what you've done quite well in The Last Keeper is there's a rule amongst authors, which is show, don't tell. And I think in The Last Keeper, we've very much been able to just show the way that world works and to gradually trickle in bits of information that as you put it all together, then creates the full picture.
Well, thanks, Dane. And I appreciate another author's take on the novel and all your help on The Last Keeper. For those of you that want to check it out, you can find it in your local bookstores. You can also find it on Amazon.com. Thanks again for visiting The Realm. I'm J.V. Hilliard, and may your gods go with you.